The distant echo of a gunshot shattered the tranquility of Independence, Wyoming Territory, 1876, sending a flock of starlings spiraling into the azure sky as Olivia Ellsworth clutched her shawl tightly around her trembling shoulders. The news had arrived with the morning stage. Owen Fitzgerald, the man she had promised herself to, had been killed in a shootout at Rattlesnake Gulch. The body, they said, had been washed away in the spring floods before anyone could bring it back for a proper burial. Olivia stood on the porch of her father's general store, her knuckles white against the wooden railing, refusing to believe the whispers that swirled through town like tumbleweeds. Owen had promised to return to her. He had promised with those earnest blue eyes that had always seen straight through to her soul. And Owen Fitzgerald was not a man who broke his promises. Miss Ellsworth. Sheriff Thomas Reeves approached, hat in hand, his weathered face etched with sympathy. I wanted to personally express my condolences. Fitzgerald was a good man. Was? Olivia's voice cracked like dried leather. You speak as if you're certain, Sheriff. 3 witnesses saw him take 2 bullets to the chest, madam. No man survives that kind of wound, especially not out in the wilderness. The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. His horse returned to the Jenkins Ranch riderless, saddle stained with blood. Olivia's throat tightened, but she refused to shed tears before this man. Thank you for your concern, Sheriff, but until I see proof with my own eyes, I'll not be mourning Owen Fitzgerald. The sheriff's gaze dropped to the wooden planks beneath his boots. As you wish, Miss Ellsworth, but preparing yourself for the truth might be kinder in the long run. As the sheriff walked away, Olivia turned her gaze toward the distant mountains, their peaks still capped with late spring snow. Somewhere out there, she believed Owen was alive. She could feel it in her bones, in the connection they had shared since she was 18 and he 20. When he'd first ridden into Independence with nothing but determination and skill with horses. That had been 3 years ago, and in that time Owen had established himself as one of the finest horse trainers in the territory. He'd built a small ranch outside of town, working tirelessly to create a place where they could begin their life together. Their wedding had been planned for autumn, after the harvest, when the aspen leaves would turn gold like the band he'd promised to place on her finger. Olivia, her father called from inside the store. The Webster order needs preparing. With a final glance at the horizon, Olivia turned and went inside, her mind already formulating a plan. If no one would search for Owen, then she would do it herself. 200 miles away, a man lay in a cave, his body burning with fever as an elderly Apache woman pressed cool compresses to his forehead. His clothes had been removed, replaced by buckskin leggings. Bandages of soft hide wrapped his torso, stained with blood despite having been changed twice already. You fight death like angry bear, the woman said in broken English. Most men would have joined ancestors 2 moons ago. The man's eyes flickered open, revealing irises as blue as the summer sky. Can't die, he rasped. Made a promise. Promise to who? The woman asked, helping him sip water from a clay cup. Olivia, he whispered, the name itself seeming to give him strength. My Olivia, the Apache woman who called herself Morning Dove, nodded sagely. Then this Olivia strong medicine. You live for her. Owen Fitzgerald closed his eyes, exhaustion claiming him once more. In his dreams, he saw Olivia's face, her chestnut hair catching the sunlight, her green eyes filled with laughter. He'd promised to return to her, and even though death had very nearly claimed him, he intended to keep that promise. Morning Dove had found him half dead by the river, washed several miles downstream from where he'd been shot. The old woman, an outcast from her tribe who lived alone in the wilderness, had dragged his unconscious body to her cave and tended his wounds with skills passed down through generations. 2 bullets, she had told him when he first woke. 1 still inside. I take out. The procedure had been excruciating, performed with a heated knife and no whiskey to dull the pain. But Owen had endured, fixing his mind on Olivia's face, on the future they had planned together. Days turned to weeks as Owen slowly regained his strength. Mourning Dove taught him her ways of healing, showing him which plants could stop bleeding, which could fight fever, which could dull pain. She taught him to move silently through the forest, to read animal tracks, to find water in seemingly barren landscapes. And most importantly, she taught him to respect the thin line between life and death. "You walked in shadowlands," she told him one evening as they sat before a small fire at the mouth of the cave. "Death touched you, left mark on your spirit." Owen touched the scars on his chest, still tender despite the passing of time. "I saw things while I was unconscious, things I can't explain." "Vision journey," Mourning Dove nodded. "Great Spirit show you path." "I saw myself returning to independence," to Olivia, "but I also saw darkness following me." Owen stared into the flames. "Danger. Man who shoot you still lives," Mourning Dove said matter-of-factly. "Man with snake eyes." Owen knew exactly who she meant. Victor Harlow, cattle baron and land speculator, had ambushed him after Owen refused to sell his small ranch. The 20 acres Owen owned contained a year-round spring that Harlow coveted for his expanding empire. "I need to warn Olivia," Owen said, attempting to stand. His legs, still weak from weeks of disuse, buckled beneath him. Mourning Dove pushed him gently back onto his bedroll. "Not ready. Death still too close. Must learn to live again first." And so Owen's education continued. As summer stretched into fall, his body healed and strengthened. He learned to hunt with bow and arrow, to navigate by stars, to find his way in darkness. He learned patience from watching a spider weave its web and persistence from ants rebuilding after a rainstorm destroyed their hill. He learned that life was precious precisely because it was fragile. All the while, his heart ached for Olivia, and guilt gnawed at him for letting her believe he was dead. But Mourning Dove insisted he was not yet ready to face the journey back to independence. "Snake Man watching," she warned. "You return too soon, he finish what he start." In independence, Olivia moved through her days like a ghost. The vibrant young woman who had once brightened the town with her smile now kept to herself, speaking only when necessary. She had searched for Owen as much as she could, riding out whenever her father would allow it, questioning travelers, sending letters to nearby settlements. But as summer faded into autumn, even her stubborn heart began to waver. "You need to let him go, Livy," her best friend, Rebecca Miller, said gently as they sat on the porch swing one September evening. "It's been 4 months." "I can't explain it, Becky," Olivia replied, her fingers twisting the simple silver ring Owen had given her as a promise. "Sometimes I dream of him so vividly. He's in a strange place, healing, learning. It feels so real." Rebecca patted Olivia's hand sympathetically. "Grief plays tricks on the mind. Remember how I kept thinking I saw my pa in town after he passed? The mind sees what the heart wants." Olivia nodded, not wanting to argue. How could she explain something she didn't understand herself? These weren't just dreams or wishful thinking. They felt like glimpses through a window, as if their souls remained connected despite distance and supposed death. The next morning, Olivia was arranging a display of canned goods when the store's bell jingled. Looking up, she froze at the sight of Victor Harlow's imposing figure filling the doorway. The cattle baron's expensive suit and gold watch chain spoke of his wealth, but it was the coldness in his eyes that always made Olivia shiver. "Miss Ellsworth," he greeted, removing his hat, "looking lovelier than ever, even in your mourning." "I'm not in mourning, Mr. Harlow," Olivia replied stiffly, "and my father isn't here at the moment if you're looking for him." "Actually," Harlow said, approaching the counter, It's you I wish to speak with. I've come to make an offer on Fitzgerald's property. Olivia's spine stiffened. Owen's ranch is not for sale. Come now, Miss Ellsworth. Harlow's smile didn't reach his eyes. We both know Fitzgerald isn't coming back. The property will eventually go to auction for back taxes. I'm offering to purchase it now at a fair price, out of respect for your attachment to the deceased. There's nothing to discuss, Mr. Harlow. Owen arranged for the taxes to be paid through the year, and I have every reason to believe he will return to claim what's his. Something dangerous flashed in Harlow's eyes before he masked it with false sympathy. Your loyalty is touching, if misguided. Fitzgerald is dead, Miss Ellsworth. I had men search the river myself after hearing of the tragedy. How convenient that you were so eager to confirm his death, Olivia remarked, suspicion blooming in her mind. Harlow's jaw tightened momentarily before he forced another smile. Merely being a good neighbor. The offer remains open should you come to your senses. Good day, Miss Ellsworth. As he turned to leave, Harlow added, Oh, and I understand you've been making inquiries about Fitzgerald throughout the territory. A word of advice: continuing such behavior might lead some to question your mental stability. We wouldn't want your poor father to suffer the embarrassment of having his daughter committed to an asylum, would we? The threat, thinly veiled as concern, hung in the air as Harlow departed. Olivia gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles white, as a realization struck her with the force of lightning. Harlow knew something about Owen's disappearance, perhaps everything. The suspicion she had harbored in the darkest corners of her mind now blazed like wildfire. That night, Olivia snuck out after her father had gone to bed. Dressed in riding clothes and armed with her father's old revolver, she made her way to the livery stable where she saddled her mare, Willow. The autumn night was clear and cold, stars speckling the vast Wyoming sky like diamonds scattered on black velvet. The ride to Owen's ranch took less than an hour. The small cabin stood dark and silent, exactly as it had been when she'd last visited weeks ago. Olivia tied Willow to the hitching post and moved cautiously toward the cabin, lantern in one hand, revolver in the other. The interior smelled of dust and abandonment. Moonlight filtered through the windows, illuminating furniture draped in sheets Olivia's doing, from when she couldn't bear to see Owen's things gathering dust. She moved to his desk, setting down the lantern to search through the drawers for anything that might provide a clue. In the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of receipts, Olivia found a leather-bound journal she'd never seen before. Opening it, she recognized Owen's neat handwriting immediately. The journal detailed his dealings with Harlow, including the increasingly aggressive attempts to purchase his land. The final entry, dated the day before Owen's supposed death, chilled her blood. Harlow threatened Olivia today. Said accidents happen to women who associate with stubborn men. I cannot and will not allow any harm to come to her. Tomorrow I ride to Rattlesnake Gulch to confront him one last time. If he threatens her again, I'll have no choice but to take this matter to the territorial marshal. Olivia closed the journal with trembling hands. This was evidence proof that Harlow had motive to want Owen dead. But would it be enough to convince Sheriff Reeves to investigate? And if Harlow had indeed attempted to murder Owen, what would stop him from silencing her as well? A floorboard creaked behind her. Olivia whirled, raising the revolver, her heart thundering in her chest. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Miss Ellsworth, said a gruff voice as a shadowy figure stepped into the pool of lantern light. It was Decker, one of Harlow's hired guns. Mr. Harlow figured you might come snooping around here. Where's Owen? Olivia demanded, keeping the gun steady despite her fear. What did you do to him? Decker chuckled, seemingly unconcerned by the weapon pointed at his chest. Fitzgerald's fish food, lady. I put 2 bullets in him myself, watched him fall into the river. Now, why don't you hand over whatever you found there, and maybe Mr. Harlow will be merciful. I'd rather die, Olivia spat, backing toward the door. That can be arranged, Decker said, drawing his own weapon with lightning speed. Before either could fire, a whistling sound cut the air, followed by a dull thud. Decker looked down in disbelief at the arrow protruding from his shoulder, his gun clattering to the floor as his arm went limp. A tall figure appeared in the doorway behind Decker, silhouetted against the night sky. Touch her, and the next one goes through your heart. The voice was deeper than she remembered, roughened by hardship, but Olivia would have recognized it anywhere. Owen? She whispered, her own gun lowering in shock. The figure stepped into the light, and Olivia's breath caught in her throat. It was Owen, and yet not the Owen she remembered. His once clean-shaven face now bore a neatly trimmed beard. His hair had grown longer, touching his shoulders. The fine clothes he'd once favored had been replaced by buckskins and a leather vest. But it was his eyes that had changed the most, still that same piercing blue, but now holding a depth and wisdom that spoke of experiences beyond ordinary understanding. "Hello, Olivia," he said softly, his gaze never leaving hers even as he kept his bow trained on Decker. "Sorry I'm late." Olivia felt her knees weaken. The journal slipped from her grasp as she staggered forward, torn between disbelief and overwhelming joy. "You're alive," she breathed. "I knew it. I knew you couldn't be dead." Owen's expression softened, though he maintained his vigilance. "I made you a promise, didn't I?" "I never break my promises." Decker, seeing his opportunity in their momentary distraction, lunged for his fallen gun. With fluid grace that Olivia had never seen in him before, Owen kicked the weapon away and pressed the tip of his arrow against Decker's throat. "I learned patience during my time away," Owen said, his voice dangerously calm. "But don't mistake it for mercy. Now tell me, is Harlow planning to hurt Olivia?" "Go to hell," Decker snarled. Owen applied slight pressure with the arrow, drawing a bead of blood. "Wrong answer. Try again." Decker's eyes widened at Owen's ruthlessness. "Harlow wants the land. That's all I know. He sent me to scare her off, maybe rough her up a little if she resisted." "I swear." Owen studied the man's face, then nodded slightly. "Tie him up," he instructed Olivia. "There's rope on my saddle outside." Olivia hurried to comply, her mind whirling with questions. When she returned with the rope, Owen had forced Decker onto a chair. Together they bound him securely, gagging him with a bandana. Once Decker was immobilized, Owen finally lowered his bow. For a moment, he and Olivia simply stared at each other across the dim room, the reality of their reunion washing over them in waves. "I thought you were dead," Olivia finally said, her voice barely audible. "Everyone said you were dead." "I nearly was," Owen replied, instinctively touching the scars beneath his clothing. "If not for Mourning Dove." "Who's Mourning Dove?" "An Apache healer. She found me by the river, half dead from Decker's bullets. She saved my life and taught me so much more." Owen took a tentative step toward her. "Olivia, I wanted to come back sooner. But Mourning Dove warned me that returning too quickly would only put you in danger. I needed to heal. I needed to learn." "Learn what?" Olivia asked, still trying to reconcile the refined horse trainer she'd known with this wilderness-hardened man before her. "How to live," Owen answered simply. "How to truly live, not just exist. How to see with more than my eyes, hear with more than my ears. How to protect what matters." He closed the distance between them, his calloused hand gently cupping her cheek. "And you, Olivia Ellsworth, matter more than anything in this world." Olivia leaned into his touch, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I never stopped believing. Everyone thought I was crazy, but I felt you. Sometimes I would dream of you in a cave, or learning to use a bow, or sitting by a fire with an old woman. Owen's eyes widened. You saw? Across all that distance. I saw, Olivia confirmed. Not clearly, not always, but enough to keep hope alive. Their moment was interrupted by muffled sounds of protest from Decker. Owen turned, his expression hardening. We need to leave. When Decker doesn't report back, Harlow will send more men. We should go to the sheriff, Olivia said, retrieving the journal from where it had fallen. Owen shook his head. Reeves is in Harlow's pocket. Has been for years. No, we need to gather evidence. Build a case strong enough that even Harlow's money can't bury it. Then where do we go? Olivia asked, already moving to gather what few valuables remained in the cabin. First, to Mourning Dove. She'll shelter us while we plan our next move. Owen checked the bindings on Decker one last time. Pack only what you need. We travel light and fast. Within minutes, they had saddled Olivia's mare and Owen's Mustang, a wild-eyed bay he'd apparently tamed during his absence. As they rode away from the cabin, Olivia couldn't help glancing back at the home Owen had built for them, now abandoned once more. We'll return, Owen promised, reading her thoughts. Harlow won't win. Not this time. They rode through the night, keeping to game trails and dried creek beds to avoid leaving obvious tracks. Owen moved with the confidence of someone intimately familiar with the wilderness, guiding them through darkness with uncanny precision. By dawn, they had covered nearly 20 miles, climbing into the foothills of the Medicine Bow Mountains. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the eastern sky, they paused to rest the horses. Sitting side by side on a fallen log, Owen finally took Olivia's hands in his thumbs tracing circles on her skin. I've rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, he said softly. What I would say when I finally saw you again. But now that you're here, words seem inadequate. Then don't use words, Olivia whispered. Owen needed no further invitation. His lips met hers, tentatively at first, then with growing passion as 3 months of separation and longing poured into a single kiss. Olivia's arms wound around his neck, pulling him closer, confirming through touch that he was real, alive, returned to her. When they finally parted, both breathless, Owen rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Olivia Ellsworth. Death itself couldn't keep me from coming back to you. And I love you, Owen Fitzgerald, she replied, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw, familiarizing herself with this new, weathered version of the man she adored. Though you've changed in ways I'm only beginning to understand. We've both changed, Owen acknowledged. You're stronger than I remember, more determined. Grief and hope will do that to a person, Olivia said with a small smile. Now tell me everything. I want to know what happened from the moment you left town that day. As the horses grazed nearby, Owen recounted his confrontation with Harlow at Rattlesnake Gulch, the ambush by Decker and another man, the searing pain of bullets tearing through his flesh, the cold embrace of the river as he fell from the cliff. He described drifting in and out of consciousness as the current carried him downstream, the strange peace he'd felt as life seemed to ebb away. I saw a light, he admitted, just like the preachers describe. Warm and welcoming. Part of me wanted to go toward it. But then I heard your voice, calling me back, and I fought. I fought like hell to stay in this world. He told her about waking in Mourning Dove's cave, delirious with fever, the excruciating process of having the bullet removed, the long weeks of recovery. He described the old woman's wisdom, the lessons in survival, in understanding the language of the natural world, in finding strength in stillness. She said I had been touched by death, marked by it, Owen explained, that I needed to learn to live again before I could return to my old life. I didn't understand at first. I was impatient, desperate to get back to you. But gradually, I began to see what she meant. And what was that? Olivia asked, entranced by his tale. that I had been merely existing before, not truly living. Working, planning, building all important things, but I wasn't fully present in my own life. I was always focused on tomorrow, on having enough money, enough land, enough security. Owen's gaze drifted to the mountains rising before them, painted gold by the morning sun. Morning Dove taught me to find richness in the moment, to appreciate the miracle of each breath, to understand that life is precious precisely because it's fleeting. Olivia studied him, seeing the profound change his experience had wrought. And yet you came back. You could have stayed in that wilderness, living that new understanding. Owen turned back to her, his eyes intense. Because the most important lesson was that love, real love, is the greatest form of living fully. And my love is with you, Olivia. Always has been, always will be. They continued their journey through the morning, climbing higher into the mountains. By midday, they had reached a secluded valley nestled between two ridges, protected from the wind and hidden from casual observation. A thin plume of smoke rose from a cave entrance partially concealed by a stand of aspens, their leaves a brilliant gold against the blue autumn sky. Morning Dove emerged as they approached, her deeply lined face betraying no surprise at Owen's return or his companion. She was smaller than Olivia had imagined from her dreams, bent with age but moving with deliberate grace. "You bring woman," the old Apache observed, her dark eyes assessing Olivia carefully. "The one you speak of in fever dreams." "This is Olivia," Owen confirmed, dismounting and helping Olivia down from her mare. "Olivia, this is Morning Dove." Olivia stepped forward, offering her hand. Instead, Morning Dove took her face between weathered palms, looking deeply into her eyes. "Your spirit's strong," she declared after a moment. "You see him across great distance. Unusual for white woman." "I saw you too," Olivia admitted. "In my dreams. You were teaching Owen, healing him." Morning Dove nodded, seemingly satisfied with what she found in Olivia's gaze. "Come, rest. Then we talk of Snake Man." The cave was surprisingly comfortable, the floor covered with woven mats and furs, the walls decorated with bundles of dried herbs and strange symbols painted in red and black. A small fire burned in a central pit, the smoke rising through a natural chimney in the rock ceiling. After a simple meal of rabbit stew and wild greens, Morning Dove listened intently as Owen explained their situation. The old woman's face remained impassive, but her eyes narrowed at the mention of Harlow's name. "Snake Man has dark spirit," she pronounced when Owen had finished. "Many moons ago, his men attack my people's camp, kill many, including my son. I escape but never return to tribe. Too much sorrow." "I'm so sorry," Olivia said, understanding now why the old woman lived alone in the wilderness. Morning Dove acknowledged her sympathy with a slight nod. "Snake Man must be stopped, but not with more killing. Blood calls for blood without end." "What do you suggest?" Owen asked, respecting the old woman's wisdom. "You need proof of his evil for white man's law," Morning Dove said practically. "But Snake Man careful, covers tracks like fox. He's been trying to buy up all the land with water rights," Olivia mused. "Not just Owen's property, but others too. Some have sold, some have refused. Those who refused have suffered accidents." Owen leaned forward, interest piqued. "What kind of accidents?" "The Wilkins place burned down in July. They blamed a lightning strike, but there hadn't been a storm for weeks. And Old Man Peterson fell from his roof while supposedly making repairs, though everyone knows he was afraid of heights and never would have climbed up there himself." "Harlow's creating a monopoly on water," Owen realized. "In a few years, he'll control the entire region. Everyone will have to pay his prices or go thirsty." Morning Dove nodded sagely. "Water is life. Control water. Control life. We need to find Harlow's records," Olivia said, excitement building as a plan formed in her mind. Every businessman keeps ledgers, correspondence. If we could get our hands on his private papers, we might find evidence of his methods. Breaking into Harlow's ranch would be suicide, Owen cautioned. The place is like a fortress, crawling with hired guns. Not the ranch, Olivia countered. His office in town. He keeps an office above the bank where he conducts his business affairs. It would be much easier to access, especially at night. Owen looked at her with newfound appreciation. You've given this some thought. I've had 3 months to consider who might have wanted you dead, Olivia replied grimly. Harlow was always at the top of my list. Mourning Dove had been listening silently, her ancient eyes moving between the two young people. Plan good, she finally said, but dangerous. Snake Man expect you now after cabin. She turned to Owen. You teach her what I teach you. Make her ready. Owen nodded, understanding the wisdom in the old woman's words. We'll need time to prepare. A week at least. A week, Olivia protested. Every day we wait gives Harlow more time to cover his tracks. And rushing in unprepared gives him the opportunity to finish what he started. Owen countered gently. Trust me, Olivia. What Mourning Dove taught me might seem strange to you, but it could mean the difference between success and failure, between life and death. Seeing the resolve in his eyes, Olivia relented. 1 week. No more. Mourning Dove's wrinkled face creased in what might have been a smile. Good. Training begin at dawn. The next 7 days were unlike anything Olivia had ever experienced. Each morning began before sunrise with exercises to quiet the mind and sharpen the senses. Mourning Dove taught her to move silently through the forest, to control her breathing, to blend with shadows. Owen showed her how to use a bow, though she proved more adept with a knife, a small, sharp blade that could be concealed in her boot. They practiced creating diversions, reading tracks, memorizing paths by feel rather than sight. Mourning Dove instructed Olivia in basic medicine, which plants could induce sleep, which could accelerate healing, which could temporarily paralyze. Owen taught her the Apache hand signals he had learned, allowing them to communicate silently over distance. At night, exhausted from the day's training, Olivia and Owen would curl together on a bed of furs at the back of the cave, whispering plans and memories until sleep claimed them. Despite the danger looming on the horizon, these were among the happiest days either had known. Finally reunited, bound by common purpose, deepening their understanding of each other with each passing hour. I never would have guessed, Owen murmured one night, stroking Olivia's hair as she lay with her head on his chest, that the prim and proper shopkeeper's daughter I fell in love with would take so naturally to living wild. Olivia chuckled softly. Perhaps I was always wild at heart, just waiting for the right person to bring it out in me. Or perhaps we're all capable of more than we imagine, Owen suggested, when circumstances demand it of us. On the 7th night, Mourning Dove called them to sit with her by the fire. The old woman's eyes gleamed in the firelight as she regarded them solemnly. Tomorrow you go, she declared. But first ceremony. From a deerskin pouch, she produced a mixture of herbs which she cast onto the flames, creating fragrant smoke that filled the cave. She began to sing in her native tongue, a haunting melody that seemed to penetrate to the bone. With a small stone knife, she made tiny cuts on their palms, pressing their bleeding hands together. Now you share blood, she explained. Share spirit, stronger together than apart. She wrapped a strip of buckskin around their joined hands, binding them physically as well as symbolically. When danger comes, remember this bond. It will give strength when needed most. At dawn, they prepared to depart. Mourning Dove presented each with a small medicine pouch to wear around their necks. Protection, she said simply. To Olivia, she also gave a small clay pot of dark ointment. For wounds. Heal quick. Stop bleeding. As they mounted their horses, the old Apache woman stood before them, straight and dignified despite her years. "You good children," she said, emotion cracking her voice for the first time. "Come back when Snake Man defeated. Tell old woman your victory." "We will," Owen promised, leaning down to clasp her shoulder in respect. "Thank you for my life, Morning Dove." "Life already yours," she replied cryptically. "I only remind you how to live it." With that blessing, they rode away, following a hidden trail that would lead them back toward independence without exposing them to main roads where Harlow's men might be watching. They arrived on the outskirts of town after nightfall, keeping to the shadows as they made their way to the livery stable. The owner, Martin Cooper, had been a friend to Owen's father years ago and harbored no love for Victor Harlow. "Sweet Jesus," Cooper gasped when Owen stepped into the lantern light. "They said you were dead, boy." "Reports of my death were somewhat exaggerated," Owen replied with a grim smile. "We need your help, Martin, and your discretion." The old hostler listened intently as they outlined their situation and their plan. When they finished, he nodded solemnly. "About time someone stood up to that snake Harlow. You can stay in the hayloft, nobody goes up there but me. And I'll keep an eye out, let you know when Harlow leaves his office." For 2 days, they observed the comings and goings at Harlow's office from the vantage point of the livery stable's hayloft. The cattle baron kept regular hours, arriving at 9 each morning and departing at 5, with his clerk staying an additional hour to tidy up before locking the premises. Tonight, Owen decided on the evening of the second day. The full moon will give us enough light to see without using a lantern once we're inside. As darkness fell, they dressed in the dark clothing Morning Dove had provided, buckskins dyed black with walnut husks, soft-soled moccasins that made no sound on wooden floors, bands of charcoal to darken their faces. Around midnight, with most of the town asleep, they made their way to the rear of the bank building where a narrow staircase led to the second-floor offices. The lock on the back door was simple enough for Owen to pick using the slender metal tools Morning Dove had crafted for him. Inside, they moved like shadows through the clerk's outer office and into Harlow's inner sanctum. The room smelled of expensive cigars and leather, the furnishings ostentatious compared to the modest businesses surrounding it. Owen kept watch at the window while Olivia, whose small hands were better suited to delicate work, searched through the desk drawers and filing cabinets. Most contained ordinary business correspondence, land deeds, cattle records. But in a hidden compartment beneath the desk drawer, secured with a second lock that took precious minutes to open, Olivia found what they were seeking, a leather-bound ledger different from the others. "Owen," she whispered, excitement making her voice tremble. "Look at this." The book contained names, dates, amounts. Some entries were marked with a simple A or F, accident or fire, Olivia surmised. Others had B for bribe. Owen's name appeared with a D beside it, death. "This is it?" Owen breathed, leafing through the damning evidence. Names of everyone who stood in his way, records of payments to men like Decker, even notes on Sheriff Reeves' payoffs. Olivia was about to respond when a floorboard creaked in the outer office. Both froze, eyes meeting in alarm. Someone was in the building. Silently, Owen motioned for Olivia to hide behind the heavy curtains while he positioned himself beside the door, knife in hand. The door handle turned slowly, and a shaft of lamplight preceded the intruder into the room. "I know you're in here," came Victor Harlow's voice, cold and controlled. "My men saw you enter. Did you really think you could steal from me without consequences?" Owen remained motionless, waiting for Harlow to step fully into the room. The cattle baron moved cautiously, the lamplight throwing his shadow across the floor. "Come out now, and perhaps we can negotiate," Harlow continued, scanning the room. "Continue hiding, and I'll have my men burn this building to the ground with you inside it." When Harlow's back was turned toward the curtains where Olivia hid, Owen made his move. Swift and silent as Morning Dove had taught him, he closed the distance between them, bringing his knife to Harlow's throat from behind. "Drop the lamp," Owen commanded softly. Slowly, Harlow stiffened at the sound of Owen's voice. "Fitzgerald? Impossible. You're dead." "As I told your man Decker, reports of my death were exaggerated," Owen replied, pressing the knife just firmly enough to draw a drop of blood. "The lamp. Now." Harlow carefully lowered the lamp to the desk. "Whatever you're planning, it won't work. I own this town. My men are already surrounding the building." "Olivia," Owen called quietly, "show our friend what we found." Olivia emerged from behind the curtains, the ledger clutched to her chest. "It's all here, Harlow. Every crime, every bribe, every murder you've ordered. Including Owen's." Harlow's face contorted with rage. "No court will take the word of a presumed dead man and a hysterical woman over mine." "Perhaps not," Owen acknowledged. "But the territorial marshal might see things differently, especially when this ledger is accompanied by sworn statements from your victims' families." "You'll never make it out of town alive," Harlow threatened, though a hint of uncertainty had crept into his voice. "We already have," Owen informed him with cold satisfaction. "What you saw enter this building was Martin Cooper and his son, dressed to resemble us. They left 30 minutes ago through the front door while your men watched the back. By now, they're safely home with a dozen witnesses to their whereabouts all evening." Harlow's face drained of color as he realized the trap. "What do you want? Money? I can pay more than you can imagine." "We want justice," Olivia stated firmly. "For Owen, for the Wilkins family, for Old Man Peterson. For everyone you've hurt in your greed. And we're going to get it," Owen added, producing a length of rope from inside his jacket. "You're going to sit right here, nice and quiet, while we pay a visit to Judge Hollister. Unlike Sheriff Reeves, the judge has a reputation for incorruptibility." "You're making a mistake," Harlow said, desperation edging into his voice as Owen bound him to his chair. "My men will come looking when I don't return home. By which time you'll be in the territorial prison awaiting trial," Olivia countered, gathering the ledger and other incriminating documents they'd found. "Judge Hollister keeps odd hours. He'll be more than happy to issue an arrest warrant in the middle of the night for crimes of this magnitude." As Owen finished securing Harlow, gagging him with his own monogrammed handkerchief, Olivia moved to the window, peering through the curtains at the street below. "There are 2 men at the corner," she reported. "Armed." Owen nodded, having anticipated as much. "We'll use the route we planned across the rooftops to the church, then down through the bell tower." With a final check of Harlow's bonds, they slipped out through the office door, locking it behind them. The journey across the rooftops was perilous in the moonlight, but Morning Dove's training served them well, teaching them to move with balance and precision, to find handholds in seemingly smooth surfaces, to distribute their weight to minimize noise. They reached Judge Hollister's home just as the town clock struck 2. The elderly jurist, known for his insomnia, answered their knock with surprising promptness, his white eyebrows rising nearly to his hairline at the sight of Owen Fitzgerald standing on his porch. "Judge Hollister," Owen greeted with a respectful nod. "I apologize for the hour, but we have urgent business that cannot wait until morning." The judge adjusted his spectacles, studying Owen with frank amazement. "Young man, the entire territory believes you to be deceased. A misconception I hope to correct officially," Owen replied. "But first, we need your help bringing a murderer to justice." Judge Hollister ushered them inside, listening with increasing gravity as they presented the evidence against Victor Harlow. The ledger particularly drew his attention, his gnarled finger tracing the entries with mounting disgust. This is the most blatant record of criminality I have encountered in 40 years of jurisprudence, he declared when they had finished. Where is Harlow now? Secured in his office, Owen answered. Though I cannot say how long our knots will hold him. The judge rose with surprising spryness for a man of his years. Then we have no time to waste. I'll write the warrant immediately, but we'll need more than Sheriff Reeves to execute it, given his apparent complicity. The stage brought 4 U.S. Marshals to town yesterday, Olivia remembered. Something about escorting a federal prisoner. They're staying at the Independence Hotel. Perfect, Judge Hollister nodded approvingly. Miss Ellsworth, would you be so kind as to rouse the hotel manager? Ask him to direct the marshals to meet us at Harlow's office with all haste. Within an hour, an extraordinary procession moved through the silent streets of Independence. 4 U.S. Marshals, Judge Hollister, Owen, and Olivia, all converging on the bank building where Victor Harlow remained captive. The cattle baron's furious shouts could be heard through the door as they ascended the stairs. The lead marshal, a granite-faced man named Dawson, nodded to his colleagues, who drew their weapons before he unlocked the door. Harlow had managed to work the gag loose but remained securely tied to the chair. His face contorted with rage at the sight of the official party. This is outrageous. I've been assaulted, restrained against my will. I demand these people be arrested immediately. Victor Harlow, Marshal Dawson responded calmly, unfolding the document Judge Hollister had prepared. I have here a warrant for your arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, bribery of public officials, and numerous other crimes against the territory of Wyoming. You will be taken to Cheyenne to await trial before the territorial court. This is absurd, Harlow sputtered. Based on what evidence? The testimony of a dead man and his delusional fiancé. Judge Hollister stepped forward, the ledger in his hands. Based primarily on your own meticulous records, Mr. Harlow. Most criminals have the good sense not to document their misdeeds so thoroughly. As the marshals cut Harlow loose only to replace Owen's ropes with official handcuffs, the cattle baron's bluster gave way to cold calculation. His eyes fixed on Owen with venomous hatred. This isn't over, Fitzgerald. A man in my position has friends in high places. I'll be out before the week is through. Perhaps, Judge Hollister interjected, but your reputation and standing will never recover. And given the severity of these charges, I would not be so confident in your influential friends. The governor himself has been seeking to curb the excesses of men like you who believe their wealth places them above the law. Dawn was breaking as the marshals led Harlow away. Word spread quickly through the awakening town, and by breakfast time, the extraordinary tale of Owen Fitzgerald's return from the dead and Victor Harlow's dramatic midnight arrest had reached every home in Independence. Owen and Olivia, exhausted from their night's work, found themselves surrounded by well-wishers and curious townsfolk as they made their way to her father's store. William Ellsworth had already heard the news and stood waiting on the porch, his weathered face a mixture of disbelief and joy. "Pa!" Olivia called, hurrying ahead to embrace her father. "It's true. Owen's alive." The older man's eyes misted as he looked over his daughter's shoulder at the approaching figure of Owen Fitzgerald. Changed, hardened, but unmistakably the young man he had come to respect as his future son-in-law. "I never doubted it," William declared, extending his hand to Owen. "Not with Olivia so certain. That girl has instincts sharper than a new razor." Owen clasped the offered hand warmly. "She's extraordinary, sir. I don't deserve her, but I aim to spend my life trying to." "Damn right you will," William agreed with gruff affection. "Now come inside, both of you. You look dead on your feet, and there's fresh coffee brewing." The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Owen officially reclaimed his property and legal identity, giving testimony to the territorial authorities about the attempt on his life. Sheriff Reeves was removed from office, replaced by his more honest deputy. Several of Harlow's men, including Decker, were arrested and charged as accomplices. News arrived from Cheyenne that despite his money and connections, Harlow would indeed stand trial, the evidence against him too overwhelming to dismiss. The territorial governor himself took an interest in the case, determined to make an example of the corrupt cattle baron. As autumn deepened toward winter, Independence began to return to normal, albeit a new normal, one in which Owen Fitzgerald was something of a local legend. Children would follow him through town, hoping to hear stories of his death and miraculous return. Owen bore their attention with good humor but always turned the conversation to Mourning Dove, crediting the elderly Apache woman with his survival and newfound wisdom. One crisp November morning, Owen and Olivia rode out to his ranch, now restored and improved after the months of neglect. The cabin gleamed with fresh paint, the corral held a small herd of quality horses, and the spring burbled merrily, unencumbered by Harlow's threats. "It feels like coming home," Olivia remarked as they dismounted before the cabin. "Even though I've never lived here." "Not yet," Owen agreed with a smile. "But soon, if you're still willing." Olivia turned to him, her green eyes bright in the autumn sunlight. "More than willing. Eager, in fact." Owen took her hands in his, suddenly serious. "I'm not the same man who built this place, Olivia. My time with Mourning Dove changed me in ways I'm still discovering. The life I offer you now might be different from what I promised before." "Different how?" Olivia asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Simpler in some ways, richer in others," Owen explained. "I can't go back to only caring about property and possessions, about status and security. I want to build something meaningful here, not just a ranch, but a place where we live deliberately, consciously." Olivia squeezed his hands. "That sounds perfect to me. I've changed too, Owen. Nearly losing you taught me what truly matters. And it isn't fine dresses or social standing." Relief washed over Owen's features. "In that case," he said, reaching into his pocket, "I believe I owe you a ring." The band he produced was not the gold one he had originally planned. Instead, it was a circle of silver, intricately worked with symbols that Olivia recognized from Mourning Dove's cave signs of protection, of balance, of eternal love. "I made it myself," Owen admitted as he slipped it onto her finger. "Mourning Dove taught me how to work the metal. It's not as fancy as what I would have bought you before." "It's perfect," Olivia interrupted, admiring the craftsmanship. "More meaningful than anything from a store." They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Independence, with William Ellsworth proudly walking his daughter down the aisle. The entire town turned out for the celebration, everyone eager to witness the culmination of a love story that had defied death itself. After the ceremony, as guests gathered at the Ellsworth home for the reception, Owen drew Olivia aside. "I have a surprise for you," he whispered, guiding her to the back porch where an unexpected visitor waited. Mourning Dove sat quietly in a rocking chair, looking strange and wonderful in her traditional Apache dress amidst the trappings of white civilization. Her ancient face creased into a smile at the sight of Olivia in her wedding gown. "You come?" Olivia breathed, hurrying to embrace the old woman. "I wasn't sure you would." "Promised to see victory over Snake Man," Mourning Dove replied simply. "This greatest victory, life continuing, love growing." The three of them spoke quietly for a time, sharing news of Harlow's upcoming trial and plans for the ranch. Mourning Dove listened intently, nodding occasionally, her dark eyes missing nothing. "You build good life," she finally pronounced. "Many children, many horses, many years." She reached into her deerskin pouch and produced 2 small wooden carvings, a mare and a stallion. "Wedding gift. Place by door of home. Bring fertility, protection." "Thank you," Owen said, deeply moved. "Not just for these, but for everything. For my life. For the wisdom you shared. Mourning Dove shook her head. Not give life. Show how to live it. Different thing. She patted Olivia's hand. She understand. She have same knowing in her spirit. The old woman departed the next day, returning to her solitary existence in the mountains. But her influence remained with Owen and Olivia as they began their life together at the ranch they now called New Dawn. True to Mourning Dove's prediction, the years that followed brought many blessings: 3 children, a thriving horse breeding business that became known throughout the territory for its quality stock, and a deepening of the bond between Owen and Olivia that seemed to grow stronger with each passing season. They never forgot the lessons of those tumultuous days: that life is precious and fleeting, that love transcends even death's shadow, that true wealth lies not in possessions but in presence, in fully embracing each moment as it comes. Each spring, they would ride into the mountains to visit Mourning Dove, bringing supplies, news, and their growing children to learn from the old woman's wisdom. Even after she passed peacefully in her sleep some 15 years later, they continued the tradition, teaching their children and eventually their grandchildren the lessons she had imparted. And sometimes, on quiet evenings as they sat together on the porch of their expanded home, watching the sunset paint the Wyoming sky in hues of gold and crimson, Owen would take Olivia's hand, still wearing the silver ring he had crafted for her, and whisper, "Thank you for never giving up on me," to which Olivia would always reply, with the same certainty that had sustained her through those dark months of separation, "I never doubted for a moment. Some connections can't be broken, not even by death." Then Owen would smile, the lines of experience etching his still handsome face, and respond with the wisdom that had transformed a near-death experience into a philosophy for living. "Death isn't the end, my love. It's simply a reminder to truly live while we're here." And live they did, with passion and purpose, with gratitude for each sunrise, each challenge overcome, each quiet moment shared. Their story became legend in Independence, not just the dramatic tale of a man who cheated death and brought a villain to justice, but the deeper, more enduring story of 2 souls who discovered that love, when genuine and true, creates its own kind of immortality.